It's 6:15 in the evening, and you're standing at the gas station counter with a $6 bill folded in your hand and an energy drink already sweating a ring onto the counter. The cashier doesn't look up. He slides a scratched ticket across the glass out of habit, because you buy one every night at this exact time, and neither of you has ever discussed it. It's just what happens here. You scratch it in the car with a quarter from the cup holder. Nothing. You knew it would be nothing before you scratched it. You toss it onto the passenger seat with the 4 others from this week and drive home. By tomorrow, you won't remember any of this happened, and that's the whole design of $6. It's small enough to vanish without leaving a single mark on your memory. Now hold that $6 in your head, because this video is about that exact same $6 at that exact same counter every evening for 40 years, and about the 2 completely different people it quietly decides to build out of the same habit. Stay through minute 18. That's the year the math flips, and the account stops being something you build and starts being something that builds itself. Year 1, age 24. Same counter, same cashier, same 6:15. This time, you don't reach for the ticket, you don't grab the can. You walk out of the store with empty hands, sit in your car, and open an app you downloaded the night before out of a mild sense of guilt. You move $6 into an index fund. 1 button. The entire market, no opinion required, no stock to pick. The screen shows a balance of $6, and it looks almost embarrassing, like planting a single sunflower seed in an empty lot and calling it a garden. There's no rush to it. No number to scratch off, no flash of maybe. This time, just $6 sitting inside something that owns a tiny sliver of nearly every large company on the planet. You do it again the next night, and the one after that. Eventually, you automate it, so the decision disappears entirely. $18 a month leaves your account before you ever get the chance to spend it on something with a wrapper. You barely register. It's gone. That was always the strange part about the $6. It vanished either way. You just changed where it went. A year later, the balance reads $2,280. You put in $219 of your own money. The market quietly added $90 while you weren't watching. $90. Almost insulting if you think about it too hard. You mention it at lunch to a coworker named Petrov. He asks how much you made this year. You tell him. He laughs, not cruelly, just honestly. $90 in a year? I make that before my shift ends. He's not wrong. He buys lunch out daily. Energy drink every evening, a scratch ticket whenever the jackpot gets loud enough to make the news. $6 a day, give or take, spread across 100 tiny pleasures he won't remember by Friday. You say nothing. You close the app. The difference between you and Petrov this year is $90 and a habit nobody can actually see. 5 years in, age 29. The balance sits at roughly $13,400. You've personally put in about $10,950 of it. The rest arrived out of nowhere, or so it feels. $100,450 built entirely out of things you never bought. You do the math one night, almost as a joke, and realize it's equal to every energy drink, every scratch ticket, every impulse buy at every register you stood at since you were 24. Except instead of sitting in a landfill, it's sitting in an account with your name printed at the top. That same month, a friend named Deshawn texts you a screenshot. Some coin you've never heard of, up 340% in 9 days. He's put $2,500 in. He tells you to stop being a coward, that your boring fund makes in a year what his play makes before lunch. He's right about the speed. He's wrong about the direction. You've seen this shape before. On a counter, under a coin, in a parking lot at 6,005 in the evening. The promise that something small turns into something large instantly with no waiting required. That promise has a name where you grew up. The name is a scratch ticket with better branding. You text back that you'll pass. He sends back a laughing emoji and buys more. 14 weeks later, the coin is down 88% and he stopped bringing it up. You keep doing the single most boring thing a person can do with money. You keep being early to bed and slow to rich. In about 5 minutes of runtime, the market is going to try to scare you out of this completely. Watch what happens when it does, because it's the actual hinge point of the whole story. 10 years in, age 34. The balance is roughly $34,100. You've contributed about $21,900 total. The market has handed you the other $12,200 for the crime of simply not flinching. Then the year turns ugly. The whole market drops. The word crash starts showing up in headlines that used to just talk about inflation. Your balance falls by nearly a third in 6 weeks, more paper losses than you earned all year at your actual job. Deshaun, who sold everything near the bottom of the last downturn, tells you he saw this one coming too, that he's sitting in cash now, safe on the sidelines. You don't sell. It's quieter than a decision, even. You just stop opening the app. You let the number sit there and keep the under $2 a month flowing out the door, buying the same fund while it's cheaper than it's been in 6 years. You're not brave. You're just bored enough to do nothing. And it turns out doing nothing is the single rarest skill in personal finance. By the time everyone agrees it's safe to come back in, your boring habit already bought the bottom nobody could actually see coming. 15 years in, age 39. The market comes back the way it always has so far. The balance sits around $68,900. You've put in about $32,800 of your own money. For the first time in your life, the account holds more than you ever personally fed into it. Read that twice, because it's the exact moment the story changes character. Up until now, you were pushing a stone uphill $6 at a time, and the hill barely moved. Now the stone is rolling downhill on its own, and your entire job is to just not stand in front of it. A coworker gets laid off that spring. A good guy, careful with his work, no cushion behind him, nothing between him and the next missed paycheck. You have a number you've never touched and never planned to touch sitting quietly in the background of your life. For the first time, you understand the $6 was never only about some distant retirement. It was also always a wall between you and the version of a bad year that ends in genuine panic. You don't mention it to him. You buy his lunch and say nothing else. 20 years in, age 44. The balance is around $117,000. You've contributed roughly $43,700 across 2 decades, $6 at a time, and the account has more than doubled it on its own without asking your input. For the first time, something strange starts to be true. The money the market hands you in a good year is starting to rival what you personally put in. Your account has quietly begun working a second job you never officially assigned it. You go to a reunion that summer. Someone pulls up in a car worth more than you make in a year. Someone else spends 20 minutes talking about a watch. You drive the same paid-off sedan you've had for 9 years, the one that owes you nothing and asks for nothing back. Petrov's there too, the one who laughed at your $90 all those years ago. He still buys lunch out. He still buys the ticket most nights. He asks, half joking, if you ever did anything with that little app. You tell him you stuck with it. He asks how much is in there now. You tell him. The table goes quiet in a way you didn't ask for and don't particularly enjoy. You change the subject. The $6 was never loud. It was the one thing in the room that never needed to be. 2 more time jumps left, and the second one is where the number gets loud enough to change how you read the news. 25 years in, age 49. The balance is around $89,000. You've contributed about $54,700 total, and the account has more than tripled it without needing your permission for any of it. You read financial headlines differently now. They run stories about how most people your age have almost nothing saved, how a comfortable retirement is slipping out of reach for ordinary earners. You are, on paper, an ordinary earner. Same kind of job as the people in those headlines. Roughly the same salary. The same commute, the same rent increases, the same everything, except for one habit nobody around you could see, repeated at 6005 every evening for a quarter of a century. Your friends your age talk about retirement like a cliff they're being marched toward against their will. You talk about it privately, like weather, something that arrives whether you worry about it or not. You don't say that part out loud either. By now you understand that the number is loudest when it stays completely silent. 30 years in, age 54. The balance sits at roughly $298,000. You've put in about $6,700 total across 3 decades in amounts small enough to lose down the back of a couch. The other $232,300 was never something you earned in the traditional sense. It was simply time, and you gave time the room it needed to do the actual work. This is the year the math quietly flips for good. The account now grows more in a single strong year, purely from its own size, than you could add by hand even if you doubled every contribution. You've become a passenger inside your own balance. The thing you built is now larger than the act of building it. You don't talk about the number, not to your kids, not to your coworkers, not to Deshawn, who once told you to stop being a coward. The number lives somewhere nobody thinks to look, which is exactly where it managed to grow. 40 years. Later, age 64. 40 years from that first evening, you didn't buy the scratch ticket. The balance sits at roughly $701,000. Sit with the breakdown because it's the entire story told in 3 numbers. Of that $701,000, the amount you actually contributed, $6 at a time, most evenings, across 4 decades, comes to about $87,600. The other $630,000 is pure growth. Money you never personally earned, never worked an hour toward, never noticed leaving, and never watched arrive. You didn't get lucky. You didn't pick a winner. You didn't time a single dip or top. You skipped a scratch ticket and a cold can roughly 114,600 times in a row and let the smallest possible amount sit in the most boring possible place for the longest possible stretch of time. That's the entire mechanism. There's no second secret hiding underneath it. There's no faster version where someone hands you the $61,400 sooner. The slowness was the actual price of admission, and almost nobody is willing to pay a bill that takes 40 years to clear. Petrov retires the same year you do, same job the whole way through, same salary give or take. A decent man who never missed a shift in 3 decades. He spent his $6 a day on 1,000 small comforts he genuinely enjoyed in the moment and mostly can't name today. Over 40 years, his version of that same $6 also added up to roughly $87,600, the exact same money you put in. He drank it, scratched it, spent it, tossed it on a passenger seat, and forgot about it by morning. You and Petrov stood at the same counter, holding the same $6 bill on the same evenings for 40 years. He has a lifetime of small pleasures and a modest pension. You have most of those same small pleasures too. You weren't a monk about it, and also $701,000 sitting quietly behind your life like a second income that's been working the entire time without ever asking to be thanked. Nobody can point to the specific day the two of you split apart. There wasn't one. There were just 2 different answers to the same tiny question, asked again every single evening, until the answers stopped being choices and quietly became 2 different lives. Somewhere right now, it's 6,005 in the evening and someone is standing at a gas station counter with a $6 bill already folded in their hand. The energy drink. The scratch ticket the cashier slides over without looking up, out of pure habit. They'll scratch it in the parking lot with a coin from the cup holder and it will be nothing. And some quiet part of them already knew it would be nothing before they started scratching. They're not doing anything wrong. $6 is nothing. That has always been both the trap and the door at the exact same time. The $6 is too small to ever really feel, which is exactly why almost nobody keeps it and exactly why it quietly decides everything for the rare few who do. You were never going to feel that $6 either way. The only thing you ever actually got to choose was what it was quietly turning you into on all those evenings you weren't paying close enough attention to notice. If you want the exact app settings and account type that make this fully automatic, so you never have to feel the decision the way this video described, that's next week's video. Subscribe so it's waiting in your feed.